So I'd like to call this meeting to order. What we're going to do is have the national anthem acknowledge the territories before we go on to the agenda.
We would like to acknowledge
that we are here today
on the traditional territory
of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation.
Nous tenons à reconnaître que nous sommes sur le territoire traditionnel
des Mississaugas de la
Première Nation de Credit.
Oh, Canada.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, I'll start by apologizing for starting the new year off late. We had business in committee that ran, even with the starting earlier date, ran over. Also, I just want to continue on from our meeting of December when I talked about a commitment of Vice Chair and I have that when we received the Integrity Commissioner's report on McCrimmon, it was important as part of our Code of Conduct, 6.7 of Appendix I, that the duties of the Board of Trustees shall consider and make a decision in response to Integrity Commissioner's report in a timely manner, and after the report is considered at a public board meeting. So I've made a commitment that we'll make this in January, which will be the next board meeting in 15 days. Okay, we're going to move on to the agenda, approval of the agenda. So I just had a late request from Trustee DeCroop to add a motion onto the agenda that would then be heard today. To make that happen, you have to have 2/3 support of the trustees to amend the agenda to add this to it to be heard today. So, do I have, can I have the trustees vote on adding this item to the agenda to be heard today? All I see is 3, 4. So it's 5 in support. All those in against?
Asking to hear this, to debate it today.
Yeah.
I'm just trying.
Just wait.
Part of the delegation. It's very urgent. Yeah.
Okay. So I had 5 votes for. I had 5 votes for. Okay, let's vote again. So all those in favor of hearing this motion by adding it to the agenda today, who votes for it? 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8. I have over 8, so as 2/3, that means that this motion that was presented to us will be added to, let's get our pens out, new business as 9.7. Okay, motion to reinstate the community subsidies. Okay, so we'll do that at 9.7. Everyone okay with that? Okay, we have no special presentations today, so we'll go on to item 2, declaration of conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3. I'm going to take all these items as one unit, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6 is at a future agenda. Do I have someone putting it on the floor? Trustee Crocker, do you put it on the floor? A seconder, Trustee Lawton? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. So now we'll move on to Chair's request for written questions from trustees. Do I have any? Okay, I do. There you go. I thought you can talk, yes.
Thank you. Through your chair, I have 2 questions. So can you please tell us how many elementary school spots does the Peel Board have for the gifted program for Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon? 2, how many kids have been identified? 3, how many secondary school spots are available? 4, how can a student get placed in the gifted classroom? 5, how can a student who has been identified and tested and deemed gifted get a place in a classroom?
Thank you. So you have those written questions. Can you submit it to?
And I have another one, sorry,
Okay.
one other set from another person.
Yeah, okay.
1 second. Is there any consideration to having French immersion programs in the balanced calendar schools?
Okay.
Thank you.
So those sets of questions, if you'll pass it to Donna Baptista, we'll put those in the record and then respond hopefully at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other written questions from trustees? Trustee DeCroop.
Thank you. First, I'd like to start off. I know this is not the right time. I probably should have done that earlier, but I do have a point of privilege just to make it explain as part of public record that I did have written questions from on the previous agenda, but I am working currently with the chair and the vice chair to get answers to those questions, and we will do our best to answer as much of them in public as legally possible. Is that correct? Did I phrase that correctly?
That's our goal, to respond to your questions, yes.
Yes, thank you. And my new questions are, what concrete steps and actions has the Peel District School Board taken to address Islamophobia in the system in the past 3 years?
Okay, that's a written question, so please submit that to Donna Baptiste, and hopefully we can get a response to you by the next board meeting. Okay, I have another question from Trustee Sohi. Let's just turn you on. There you go.
Thank you, through your chair. My question is actually came from the public. It's what measures of accountability are there for ELL and ESL student profiles when going through each of the 7 steps, and then especially when transitioning into secondary school? So
Okay.
I'll forward my question to you.
So hopefully, that's a good question. So hopefully we can get that, submit that to Donna Baptiste as well, and we'll hopefully get that to you in the next board meeting. Thank you. I have another question from Trustee Aurora.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. With reference to the postponement of the Grade 9 Math EQAO previously scheduled for January 2020, what measures do we have in place or will we have in place to ensure that students are well prepared for the examination?
Thank you for that question. If you again can pass that on to Donna Baptiste, we'll do our best to address that on the next board meeting. Thank you. Any more written questions? Okay, we'll move on from Section 4 now to Section 5. Do I have any notices of motion or petitions from trustees? So I have a Trustee Kay McDonald. You have a motion?
Thank you. Be it resolved that the Peel District School Board celebrate Christian Heritage Month in the month of December, starting in December 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, if you can pass that motion on to Donna Baptiste, it'll be added into the agenda for a new business next board meeting. I have another Trustee Sohi. You have a motion or petition?
Yeah, thank you. Whereas it was noted that there is no continuing education related to customer relations for office managers and assistants. whereas it was noted that with the changing demographics and need of students that there are greater demands on our frontline staff. Be it resolved that minimally every 3 years, the office assistants and office managers will be offered culturally responsive client service training and other in-service training related to special needs sports to aid them in better assisting parents and students, and that such training be created with advisement from the Special Education Advisement Committee, the Parent Involvement Committee, and employee representation. Thank you.
Thank you again. Can you pass that to Donna Baptiste so we can have that entered in for our next meeting in 15 days? Thank you very much. Any other notice of motion or petitions? Seeing none, we'll move on to a special section for receipt of retirements. Do we have any comments to the retirements? If not, can I have it put on the floor by Trustee K. McDonald and seconded by Trustee Benjamin? All those in favor? Carried. So we're going to move on to delegations, item 7. So before we start, I just want to say that the Peel District School Board creates a connection to the community through our delegation process to bring the issues from the community to the attention of the trustees. This is one way we can better be shared your information with us. As this is my first term as chair, I would like to begin each delegation portion of the meeting by reminding everyone of the bylaws, especially G3, that I will share at each meeting as part of our delegation agenda. As per G3, delegations may express opinions with regards to the board decisions or make submissions with respect to a recommendation. Delegations must be issue-based and respectful. All trustees look forward to listening to the comments, but delegations must refrain from making statements concerning character, performance, or identifying individuals by name and or title, including students, staff, citizens, or trustees of the Peel School Board. If this happens, I will be kindly asking you to rephrase your comments. We're happy to listen to your delegations, and when finished, please wait because we have questions of clarifications from our trustees. So, to start the process, we have our first delegation, Joanna Downey, regarding human sex trafficking. Joanna. And please identify the people there with you at the podium. Do I get it? I think he turns it on. Yep, you're on.
On? Good evening. Thank you, Chair and fellow and trustees. My name is Joanna Downey. I'm a councillor for the Region of Peel. I represent Ward 2 in Caledon. And I'm here with my colleagues this evening, Jody Miller from Elizabeth Fry, and Constable Joy Brown from Peel Regional Police. I also have Sonia Mystery behind me from the Region of Peel. She's Government Relations, and Samantha McNeil, who basically wrote our strategy on addressing human sex trafficking in the Region of Peel. We have 10 minutes, so which is actually 5 minutes more than Dufferin Peel Catholic gave us, so thank you very much. We appreciate that. I was speed reading through that delegation. I'd also like to say it's quite refreshing to see a full chamber. I wish Regional Council had this much attendance. We do not. It's obviously not as exciting. But our meetings are 9:30 on Thursday mornings if anybody wants to come. So I think I have clicker. Okay. So as many of you know, through your communities and your schools, human sex trafficking in the Region of Peel is a growing issue. We have a growing community. Our community poses many opportunities as well as many challenges. I'm going to quickly go through some of the, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. I'm going to pass it over to Joy to talk about the system gaps. Oh, that's the next one. Double-sided. Thanks. That's why I bring them with me. So some of the key stats, just to bring everybody up to speed in Peel. Human sex trafficking has now surpassed drug and gun trafficking due to its low risk and high financial reward. The average age of entry into the commercial child sex exploitation is 13 and a half years old. This should be alarming to all of you, as it is to me as a mother of a 13-year-old daughter. 63% of the criminal human sex trafficking investigations in Canada are being conducted in the GTA. Our proximity to 400 series highways and the Pearson International Airport makes us basically a hotbed and at high risk. The majority of victims trafficked to, through, or from Ontario are Canadian citizens. Traffickers earn approximately $280,000 per victim each year through all forms of human sex trafficking. I will also note, and I think this is especially important for all of you to remember, there is no neighborhood, no schoolyard, no shopping mall, no socioeconomic status, no demographic that is immune to this situation. There is no one community that is experiencing this more than any other. It is across the board, and that probably is one of the most troubling pieces of this entire issue. I'm going to pass it over to Constable Brown to go through some of the system gaps.
So as Joanna said, I work for Peel Regional Police. I'm in community mobilization, and I'm also the chair of the Peel Human Trafficking Service Providers Committee, which was formed in 2015. So the Peel Human Trafficking Service Providers Committee has approximately 40 members who represent health, legal, and social service sectors within our region and without of our region as well in addressing human trafficking. I chair the committee, it basically in 2017 we delegated regional council to just basically look at some of the gaps that we were seeing in the system and some of the resources that we were lacking within the region of Peel. So if we look at some of the system gaps, lack of coordinated approach to access to services for victims and survivors of human trafficking, the lack of safe and dedicated housing options, which was really big because we had to actually send people out of region when we were talking about safe houses, emergency houses, as well as transitional houses. So those who were safety was not an issue had to actually move out of region to be able to find those supports. And then there were systems gaps that led to us referring outside of the region as well. We wanted to make sure, because Peel region is such a large region, that we had those dedicated services within our region itself. So Regional Council was very supportive, and from there, in June 2018, Regional Council endorsed a strategy to address human trafficking here in the region of Peel. So the preventative, there's three pillars: prevention, intervention, and housing as well. The prevention pillar is very key, particularly when we're delegating to the school boards, because you really play a big part in us being able to get that information out there and being able to get that information out there to young people so they're not caught up in human trafficking moving forward. So we also developed a 3 to 5 year plan with the regions, looking at our prevention strategy that our committee was currently doing over the 5 years that we existed, but kind of adding on to that as well. The intervention piece is a community hub where a victim or survivor can access all of those services in one place. It's buried inside of other services, a building that has other services, so it's not easily recognizable, so that we don't have traffickers or recruiters hanging out outside that specific building. So that is a perfect way for that individual to be able to access all those services that they would need and basically have that wraparound support that they would need. The exiting or the housing, it includes emergency as well as transitional housing. All three pillars are, well, actually the intervention and exits are a 3-year pilot. The housing, as I mentioned, emergency and transitional. The emergency, you can stay for up to 4 months, and the transitional up to 2 years. So that gives you a great opportunity to be able to get your life back together when coming out of being trafficked. So that's the strategy itself.
Up to now, starting in 2012, the Peel School Board has been implementing programs within your school systems to educate students on human sex trafficking. And they've done that mainly in partnership with EFRI. I'd like also to commend you for moving so quickly in the last little while and having a staff member come on board with the human sex trafficking service providers table. we need a shorter acronym. Also, as we're moving forward, the updated elementary health curriculum has implemented this into grade, and this actually, there's a typo on here. This piece was put into grade 7 and grade 8 curriculum as of August 2019. So the intermediate level teachers are mandated to include the subject matter. By working together with the table of service providers, we're able to resource that. We're here to build that partnership with the school boards so that your staff can be trained and are able to deliver the curriculum in a comfortable way so that when they're approached by students, they have the answers, they have the supports, and they have what they need in place to move forward and seek help for those students. I think ultimately our goal is to seek that partnership with you and to carry on working together to create safe communities for Peel. I'm going to turn it over to Jody from Elizabeth Fry, and she's going to talk about prevention education.
I'm a little shorter than the other two. All right, thank you, Joanna. In alignment with the prevention pillar, we are seeking continued collaboration with the school boards to raise awareness through prevention education. We at the Elizabeth Fry Society are the primary not-for-profit organization that is delivering this prevention education programming in the region of Peel, and we are currently offering this program in schools in the Peel District School Board. And have been for a number of years. Our staff are trained in delivering trauma-informed programming and have experience running the programs in the Peel region in schools, group homes, community agencies, shelters, and justice sites since 2011. Our content is based on the U.S. programming My Life, My Choice, which has been revised to reflect Canadian content and includes addressing social media as one of the tactics to groom and recruit young women. Approximately 1,650 girls have participated in the Empowering Against Exploitation program since its inception, and in 2018-19, 209 girls participated in the program. 73% of girls who participated reported an increased capacity to make decisions. 86% of girls reported that they received support from the program to develop a plan on how to be safer. So girls will be safer when they're given the tools to recognize and avoid exploitative situations. We also run the Empowering Young Men program, which is based on the first curriculum in the U.S. to engage boys in this critical discussion about demand. It too has been revised to reflect Canadian content and was specifically designed to educate young men and enlist them as allies in the movement to end the exploitation of women and girls. It has been in operation since 2017, and we have had 335 participants in this program. This curriculum that we provide within the school boards and various other sites is free of charge, and it's for boys and girls between the ages of 12 and 24.
Thank you, Jody. Our recommendations are as follows. In terms of partnerships, and these recommendations were actually endorsed before the holidays by the Dufferin Peel Catholic Board. Implementing youth-centered curricula in all schools by using best practice models, empowering the models that Jody has just spoken to, mandatory training of all board and staff and trustees, inclusive of regularly content refresh, and to ensure that all staff remain aware of current trends and issues in collaboration with the Peel Human Trafficking Service Providers Committee. I'll interject a little bit there. We are very fortunate in Peel to be leading in this sector. We are the only region that has a strategy. Was that my timer? I'm almost done. We are the only region that has a strategy. We have been very well received by the province. We just recently met with Minister Dunlop. They're quite receptive to what we're doing and how we're doing it and want to see that continue and have, I don't want to overstep, but they're there with funding, and those announcements are coming forward as well. Creating board-specific protocols is incredibly important in consultation with the Human Trafficking Service Providers Committee, and the referral processes and resources to respond to sex trafficking disclosures. This is a really important piece. It's so important that the staff are trained appropriately so that when children are coming to them, they know what to do and they know how to respond. Or if the staff members are moving and seeking that help for the students if they're not offering it themselves. So moving forward, very last slide, engaging in the partnership with the Region of Peel and the Peel Human Trafficking Service Providers Committee, collaborating on mandatory training and increasing awareness with board staff, trustees, and students, and exploring further opportunities to collaborate on this important issue. I'm happy to take any questions. I will note that there was a little bit of a miscommunication in terms of the type of presentation we were bringing forward today, so I recognize that you are procedurally not able to move our recommendations or endorse them at this time, but ultimately, that's what we would be looking for from the board, and we appreciate your time and consideration this evening.
Well, thank you very much. And before I go to our colleagues to ask what questions, you mentioned about the Peel Human Traffic Service Providers Committee. Are we a part of that? Are we?
Up until just very recently, yes, you have become part of it.
Okay, we're a part of it now. Good, because I know I reached out to you last week and tried to have a conversation before this, and I know I've talked to Jim Van Busker, head of our social working, on the topic. Well, that's good. So let's go to our questions that I have lined up here. Trustee De Kroop, there you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming and for your presentation and for all the work that you're doing. You said a couple of things that really triggered my senses. One of the things that you talked about is community hubs, and I dream of one day having schools as community hubs, where what you described would happen exactly. Someone who might be in a maybe an abusive relationship or a dangerous situation would walk into a school where they're dropping off their kids, but be also able to seek help and meet the right people and then be provided with further information. Also get help about public health-related questions and issues. And I think perhaps one day we would get there. So I think the work that you're doing in the community is quite amazing. I would have actually loved to be able to endorse your recommendations today. I mean, I know I've asked the board to indulge me quite a bit already, but the councillor did make the time, and she is hanging out with us this evening instead of regional council. I don't know if you're going to come back 2 weeks from now. Is she going to come back?
We would be happy to come back.
You'd be happy to come back. So I guess we'll talk a little bit further about that then. But I just wanted to let you know that I'm very supportive of your cause, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to remind trustees, it's questions of clarification, please, and we have a long meeting, so we have to focus there. Thank you, and we'll move on to Trustee Marchand.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair, again, would like to echo a lot of Noka's comments. Do you have anything specific? I do have a background in working in youth justice, and particularly with young victims of the sex trade. I know I've worked on cases where we had young women preying upon other young women in schools and in classrooms, specifically in special needs classrooms and behavioral classrooms to do recruitment and enlistment. So does anything in the strategy currently address that? I'll ask that to you, and then I guess through the chair to our directors if we have anything specifically around prevention and identification of that within our board. Thank you.
Go ahead. I can speak to that from the prevention programming. So when we talk to girls and participants in our program, it's a 10-week program, so it's quite extensive. We do talk about all forms of recruitment and what they look like. So we do address that type of recruitment as well, because there's many different forms and ways that recruitment takes place. So that is addressed, and we also, being Elizabeth Fry and working with girls in the justice system, do address that as well in our programming. because of course that is something we see, especially because many of these girls are told that they are able to leave the sex trade themselves if they recruit other girls to take their place. So it is something that is addressed in the programming, and yes.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to add, Councillor Downey was speaking to the educational piece when it comes to administrators, school administrators, teachers, all of those things. We do address the issue of recruiting as well and what to look for. Being able to notice those signs is key. Being able to intervene at a very early stage when it might just be the grooming stage rather than full-on blowing trafficking is very important and can really affect how that individual moves forward. So to get that education as school administrators, teachers, and what to look for when somebody is being groomed, what to look for as far as the recruiter, the trafficker is very, very important. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. And then for your question to staff, we'll put that in our response to the delegation. Is that okay?
That would be fine, and perhaps we could invite a broader or longer, more in-depth presentation from this group outside of a general purpose committee meeting.
Okay, so that would be land and spec. Well,
Spec ed.
Well, we'll get to.
I will leave that to the
staff.
Yeah,
we'll get to that. Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Marchand. Okay, next up I have Trustee Benjamin.
Is that okay?
You're good.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I would like to thank all of you for this great presentation you have made, and I'm quite sure that this huge crowd that is here has, are being given this information, and I would like you to go back to your communities and alert them about this. My question to you is about an issue which was brought up at the Malton community safety event, where even the Peel Regional Chief was present. And they mentioned about the international students who are coming here, and you brought up the issue of housing. And these students are coming here, sometimes alone, sometimes new, with no relatives, friends, and they are finding housing in places where they have to live sometimes 20 to 30 people in a basement or in houses. So, and this is a very vulnerable section of the population because they are new to the country, they may not have relatives, and I think this is another area. And do you have any information about whether they are safe or not?
Definitely. You have the traffickers and the recruiters that really prey on your vulnerabilities, and being new to the country is one of those vulnerabilities, particularly when you don't know the system and you don't know the laws, all of those things. And you're alone, you don't have any friends, you don't have people that you can rely on, and that support system. So in getting in there and acting as your support system and then kind of moving on from there, yes, you're particularly vulnerable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Trustee Kay McDonald.
Thank you. Through your chair. So thank you to the dynamic Jays tonight for bringing this wonderful presentation forward. I'm actually out of all the brochures that I got from you, Joy, the last time we were met regarding this topic. And so my first question is there a way currently that we can make sure that our schools, especially our middle schools and high schools, have these brochures available? Because when I was distributing them and I was very stingy with them because I didn't have a lot, but the information is very well written and it was well received. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that it is a problem. And I was just wondering, is there any way of ensuring that our schools will get the brochures? Like, how would that work? Or through
Definitely. We do have a lot of that material that we're willing to give out. That's the whole point of it. So if you need anything, you can just contact me, and I can make sure that you get that information. It'd be nice to have it, instead of just having it here and piecemeal, and it'd be nice to make sure that everybody has it, should they need it. It also includes contact numbers as well. So if you suspect, these are some of the contact numbers that you can use. We have the national line that's now in place for human trafficking. So even to have that, and they can help you to coordinate all those services that you might need.
Okay, thank you. And one of the slides, you mentioned about the program to empower young men. And I think it's important to get young men as allies. But also, I was wondering, do you discuss, because there are young men that are also trafficked? And I know it's kind of like a taboo kind of topic, but I think it's also to address the issues with our young men. I know it's not as prevalent as young women, but still they suffer. And I just wonder if there's any area in your program that you address trafficking of young men.
In those particular, the Empowering Young Men program is specifically looking at the demand side of the issue, but do we recognize that it happens? It definitely does. Unfortunately, a lot of those who are trafficked males do not come forward, so it's very difficult in providing programming, more so in identifying victims. We have had victims come forward, and even though primarily EFRI works with women and girls, we have supported males who are experiencing trafficking as well.
And my second to last question is regards to suicide. Do you dialogue with suicide prevention? Because there are a lot, and from personal dealing with a family going through a similar situation, I know that the suicide, a lot of individuals contemplate suicide, and also drug use is very high.
Yes.
So do you partner with?
Yes, we partner with all sorts of services. I mean, girls who are experiencing this have extremely high and complex needs. So no one agency is able to deal with that, which is why as a committee, we have approximately 43 service providers around the table addressing all the myriad of issues that these girls experience, so that we're able to appropriately deal with them all.
Okay. And finally, through you, Chair, I was just wondering, like currently in our schools, because in the slide you mentioned that in grade 7, you said 8, but I think you said it's also grade 7, right? So in our board, do we have currently, like in our health curriculum or phys ed, I'm not sure where it would probably fall under that, where we, what age do we start having these conversations?
And we'll include that in our response to this delegation at the next board meeting. I know I've talked to Jim Buskirk about the process that we do have, so we'll add that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, then I'd like to again thank you for your delegation and appreciate talking about this very difficult topic. And we'll get you a response, as I said, hopefully at our next board meeting on the 28th, I think it is, a Tuesday. Anyway, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to remind delegates that you have 10 minutes. You hear I have my little timer here going, so I will be timing you, and we'll be going further. So our next delegation is from Catherine Soppet, Project Crossroads, Planting for Change.
Okay, thank you.
Happy New Year to you, Catherine.
Happy New Year.
Yes.
Let's make 2020 about vision and not about hindsight. Yeah. So I'm here tonight to speak with you about Project Crossroads, Planting for Change. I'm going to just beg your indulgence. The PowerPoint isn't working, so this is a PDF, so it's at 100%, and it really needs to be at 91% in order to move the slide, so I'll be moving it, jiggling it a little bit. And Project Crossroads Planting for Change is a proposal that's been put forward to Canadian Heritage for funding under the Anti-Racism Action Program, and ACER, the maple tree genus, ACER Canada, is the environmental research charity that is leading the project. Hold on a second. Okay, so it's not doing the page down for me. Okay. There we go. So, what is a crossroads? Crossroads is a period of time when critical decisions need to be made. Okay, this is going to be lots of fun. Sorry about this. There we go. In 2019, climate change was declared an emergency across all municipalities in Peel Region. And the question that we must answer is, how can we unify a collective response? And in 2019, last year, Racism, especially anti-Black racism, became a real threat to resident well-being here in the region of Peel, with impacts on job force participation for major employers in education, healthcare, social services, policing, and business. So to be clear, it's always existed. It's just that now we are hearing the voices and paying attention to them, and we need to move and act quickly. So I'm going to be introducing Acer Canada. I'll talk about the Project Crossroads. The aim is to plant 6,000 tree research specimens in Mississauga and Brampton. I'm going to introduce the notion of climate justice, what our maps show. I'll speak briefly about the Anti-Racism Action Program of the federal government, how we do have anti-racism action through Peel social policy, acknowledging that STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, environment strengthens student opportunity, and the planting for change is an action that was suggested to the advisors of the review of Peel into Peel District School Board equity issues. So hands-on STEM curriculum, well-being, and leadership skills, which come out of the Planting for Change program, help strengthen student opportunities for life sciences and pharma, which is the #1 economic sector in the region of Peel, high skills manufacturing and aerospace, which is #2 in the region of Peel, and prepares students for the high skills trades program, which are onboarding and achieving excellence in Peel District School Board. And they have been acknowledged by the report from the Mississauga Board of Trade. I'm going to be sending some information and following this presentation, seeking a letter of support from the Peel District School Board to Canadian Heritage for this program, and seeking also agreement that when target projects are rolling out, that we can have a reciprocal arrangement so that everybody knows what's going on. So Acer Canada was started up in 1987. It creates living labs on schoolyards with Planting for Change program, and it is the lead schoolyard planter of the city of Mississauga, 1 million trees. How many tree specimens for students do we want for research on climate change in the region of Peel? 6,000. So the grant application is for 660,000. It's got 200,000 in matching grants. We want to do 9 community heat spot sites, which you will see in the maps that are showing up. We'll be doing this really fast. 4 spring-fall plantings spanning 2020 and 2021 in 18 months of team planting, and followed up with 6 months of post-planting reporting and evaluation. Some of that is going to be the traditional research that is done by Acer Canada, and some of that is going to be new research on social sustainability goals and anti-racism. So this map was created for this application by the city of Mississauga. And what this map does is it overlays low tree canopy, states of well-being, and crime. So what we are going to find is some shocking information which people with lived experience will fully understand. But now we have StatCan data mapped out. Where there's hashes, this is industrial area. Where it's red, this is where we are targeting areas with low tree canopy, low well-being, high crime, high poverty, high heat vulnerability, and high levels of immigration. So on the left here we have in the purple, where you see a dark purple bruise, that's low well-being. Where you see green, that's tree canopy. Where you see density of blue here, these are areas where recent immigrants, people who are in Canada fewer than 5 years, are tending to live. And what we are finding is that people new to Canada tend to live in areas where they cannot even get to a park and get some shade from a tree. So why do we have to plant now? I think it's self-evident to everybody in this room what's been going on Fridays, Climate Change Friday. Also, we have our students going to our municipalities, Mississauga, Brampton, and making presentations which have led to declarations of climate emergency. Acer Canada has been planting trees for 32 years. This is just a sampling of some of the more than 70 schools that have been distributed through the Greater Golden Horseshoe area. And there are spots going north to Thunder Bay and Sudbury. What Acer Canada does is they plant a suite of trees, native Canadian species, and one signature red maple. and they tag the trees. So the trees are planted, they're monitored, they're maintained, and then data points are taken annually so that you can check for tree thriving. As the trees grow over time and the thriving is mapped, then what you do is what you see is the reestablishment of the tree line, and the tree line pertains to the biodiversity, and then we know how things are changing, where the animals are moving, where the plants are moving. So this is climate justice science for trees and for people. ACER knows how to chart for trees, and what we want to do is find out what is the impact on people. So ACER provides the training and equipment, and the annual tree growth data is online for sharing and comparing in open data. So we are going to be, again, this is the map. What I'm going to show you now is the disaggregated maps, how we came to this. And these were shown to the Poverty Reduction Strategy Committee. The context of Peel and the 2018 risk report is that there's no Peel region controls for the top 5 identified risks: social cohesion, economic downturn, employment and impact of automation, political context, and reputation. In 2019, the list did not change. It got a little bit worse, actually, for the economic downturn. And the thing that is missing from this list is climate change and action on climate change. So with the Anti-Racism Action Program, having a focus on diversity, inclusion, welcoming, and what we need to do to oppose oppression and to create digital literacy so people know what to do and where to go, the thing that we want to focus on is we want to counter microaggressions with micro-conciliation. And we do that by coming together, working inclusively, using the model of the Parents Reaching Out grant, so that community, based on education, is coming together in a common purpose. In this case, it's to plant the trees. So this is Nelson Mandela School in May, where they were having a planting event. And the question that we want to answer through the research is, does enacting proven science that helps trees to thrive have a transferable impact to also help people to thrive? So climate justice asserts that global warming is more than issues of environment, ecology, weather events, or nature. It includes issues of moral and political concerns such as equity, human rights, collective rights, and historical culpability for climate change. It asserts that people comprising demographics least responsible for climate change disproportionately suffer the worst. Oopsie. Gender, race, ethnicity, age, and poverty increase exposure of disadvantaged groups to the destructive effects of climate change, including injury and death. Such people in a destructive zone are the last to receive emergency relief, and such people are also the least likely to be included in emergency preparedness or planning for the impacts of climate change. So that's our map again with the red spots. So in Toronto, health measured that where there's less than 5% canopy cover, then in a heat event, you're 5 times more likely to need emergency health services. So I want you to look at the burnout places. The dark place there in the top of Mississauga, which sits under Brampton and Caledon, that's around the airport, so that's the northeast corner of Ward 5. There's the bruising of low well-being. Do we have to wrap up?
Are you close to wrapping up? You've had your 10 minutes.
Yes, I need 1 more minute. I'll go really fast.
30 seconds, please.
Okay, 30 seconds. There's the burnout. There's the bruising from the crime. This is the mapping from Peel District School Board poverty. And this is the distribution of where we live. So, in short, anti-racism, a micro-conciliation to fight racism is to plant a tree, use science, and I drew the attention of this project to the advisors into the review of Peel District School Board anti-Black racism, and it onboards people into science programs, as I mentioned, and I'll send you some more information.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the presentation, I have a Some questions here from Vice Chair Green.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Oplett, thank you for your presentation, but I'm a little bit puzzled and confused. And if you can clarify for me so I understand how planting tree is going to fight black anti-racism. Please explain that for me. Because I want to have a clear understanding of what are you asking this board to do?
So what I'm asking the board to do is to consider how the process of planting trees using a science protocol, using an inclusive approach to train people in the safety and the maintenance and the monitoring of the trees, brings people together so that they are working together in common purpose, in this particular case on climate change. And as you foster understanding between people, then you combat racism. So in helping people, especially students in high needs areas, access the program, then there is a better opportunity to access the STEM programs that separate people into different streams in secondary school, in particular the trades. The trades are, and also the life sciences, and also the high skills manufacturing, as in the aerospace industry in the region of Peel.
Okay, because it's a question for clarification, I'm going to leave it there. But I'm not going to make a comment. But, I'm going to save my comment because it's a question period. It's a question for clarification, but I'm confused. I'm still confused.
Thank you, Vice Chair Green. We're going to now go to Trustee Crocker.
Thank you, Chair. My question for clarification would be around resources. So does Project Crossroads have the resources to supply the trees and the infrastructure for planting them?
Yes, so that would be the purpose of the grant to Canadian Heritage, to cover off the cost of the resources. Other resources are being matched up by the conservancies, Credit Valley, TRCA, and Halton Environmental Network.
Now, in my observation in Peel, what the developers have done over many years is to come along and scrape off all the topsoil, build the houses, pave parking lots and streets, and we don't get much of the topsoil back. There's very little of it in my neighborhood, and I see a lot of dead trees because there's been tree planting projects from the region and the city for a long time by individuals, and they turn into bent, broken twigs, and they disappear in the next storm. So, are there resources from your organization as well for soil remediation and for watering?
So the purpose of establishing the site is to also establish a community team working with schools in the low canopy areas, so that the sites are monitored and measured. And I can't speak to the soil remediation, but I can speak to the partnership that Acer Canada has with the conservancies. And and planting trees is not the same as taking care of the trees.
That's my point. So are there the resources to
so the resources,
to water the trees at least then?
Yep. So monitor it's on open data. So Acer is the lead tree schoolyard planting agency for the 1 million trees, and it's not the only thing they do. They're involved with wetlands conservancy as well. And if you go to their website, acer-acre.ca, then you will see that there are actually 10 or 11 programs involved with environmental research of all kinds concerning trees and wetlands.
Thank you, Mrs. Socklet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to Trustee Kay McDonald.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So Happy New Year, Mrs. Socklet. I have two questions for you. How are schools selected for the program? Do you know? And how do schools get to know about it, like the Acer Canada program?
Okay, so up until this past year, mostly Acer Canada has been word of mouth between the schools. In this particular project, because we have targeted the geography and have the support of the City of Mississauga Trees and Parks, then we will, once we have the funds approved, we will be approaching schools to see which schools would like to participate, and working with embedded agencies and individuals in those low canopy areas. We have 9 letters of support so far for this grant application. We have 3 more that are coming in. So we would be communicating out through the networks and inviting people, especially educators, to be aware of the program, because you have to go through a training process. It's not a drop and run. It's not a plant and walk. It's really very much like a PRO grant, but for planting trees and looking to engage people in the community. When you restore tree canopy, then residents that are proximate to the schools that are doing the activity would do better. You're strengthening the community ties.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is Trustee Benjamin.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, thank you, Catherine, for bringing up this very important issue. My question to you is, how can I connect you to the community organizations in my ward? Because as you pointed out, my ward is one of the very needy wards, and we did some tree planting last year. I have to go back to see if those trees have taken root, and many of our students were involved. So how do I get, shall I just call you or?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Trustee Marchand.
Yes. Thank you, and through you, Chair. I understand how serving any of our underserviced communities helps everybody in that community, particularly when we look at the mapping of the social vulnerability index with the lack of tree canopy and the lack of ability for some of those students in those areas to connect with science programs. So if I get this right, you've got the money, you've got the program, you're just looking for this board to give you an endorsement in connection to the schools to run the program?
So we don't have the check cut yet because the application deadline closes tonight. We've put in for the money that would adequately fund the planting of 6,000 tree specimens and would provide training. So the training for the community and the schools. So you have training with the educators and training with the students, and then you have a separate training in the community, which would be, we want to develop monthly meetings that involve a social aspect that helps to address the intercultural affinity that we need to have in order to make progress against racism and measure against racism. So it's a large component of community development plus the trees, plus the tags for the research, plus access to the internet.
Sorry, but all you really need from us is access to the schools and the students.
Yes, permission to communicate with the schools, and the reporting would occur at the Poverty Reduction Strategy Committee because many of the stakeholders are already there, including the school boards, equity people.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kath.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions from clarification of the trustees? Well, again, I'd like to thank you, Catherine Sabat, for your presentation and your engagement in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we move on to the third delegation, Maggie Imen, who will be presenting on permits. Okay, so as we outlined, we have 10 minutes to present your situation. I think you have a presentation.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. All right, thanks. Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Chair. Good evening, sorry. Chairman and trustees. My name is Maggie Amin. I'm the founder of the Islamic Cultural Center of Toronto. I'm here to represent a coalition of 6 schools that are renting from Peel District School Board. On the screen here, if you've ever wondered what happens in your buildings on weekends, here's a sneak peek. This is a place to gather and celebrate. We use the buildings with respect. We build communities. We teach the kids all about their identity. We've done 34 drives in the past 5 years, bake sales, door-to-door, Mississauga food banks. I can count 5 or 6 campaigns. We've helped breakfast clubs survive. We've donated almost $23,000 to sick kids. We've donated $10,000 to Peel students. We've donated 350 shoebox projects for First Nations, et cetera, and it goes on. So it's not only teaching Arabic and Islam, all right? This is Adopt a Park, 500 backpacks for Syrian refugees. This is Khalil Ramzi, one of my students, and he would like to say something.
Just sensitive, it's okay. So, where else would I have this amazing opportunity? The opportunity to give back to my community. The Jannah Weekend program has not only helped to maintain, but also enhance my Arabic language knowledge and my Islamic knowledge. My religion and my language are so important to me. This program has helped me grow as a person, as much as my religion and my language are such a significant part of who I am. It's part of my identity. If this program were to close, I would lose this invaluable opportunity. And the same could be said for the hundreds of other students also attending the program, and the many students hopefully to come.
Thank you. So, do you agree that our organizations are partners to Peel District School Board? We build communities together and we bridge gaps together. On May 29th, 2019, we call that the Black Day. We were sent an email with 400% hike in rental rates. Our registration for the next academic year, September 2019, was already closed. We were on the beach on our vacation. It was too late to shut down our programs. Custodial wages jumped from $18 to $61.50 per hour, and we had to pay that. When we did our calculations and talked back to Peel District School Board, we said, well, it doesn't warrant the 400% rental hike. They came back and said, well, all your hourly rates are now daily rates. Sorry, your daily rates are now hourly rates. So a classroom that cost us $5 per day is now $30 per day. Rent went up on average for an organization that pays $25,000, it went up by 400%, almost $86,000. This happened overnight. No heads up. We were taken by surprise with no prior notice. Mr. Chair, our programs are not structured to withstand this increase. The abruptness of that decision was both brutal and painful. There was a shockwave amongst our communities. What do we do? Do we remortgage our houses? Do I sell my wedding ring? Seriously, we were talking about this. Do we take bank loans? How are we going to repay bank loans? Do we force parents to pay additional fees? We are, after all, volunteers, nonprofit organizations, and some of us are charitable organizations. Do we limit the space use? Do we close our classrooms? Do we close projects like this? What do? We were stuck. The reasons were given, or the justifications that were given, were too many. We called community centers and begged for space. They didn't have the space. They couldn't give me 22 classrooms with boards and chairs and desks. We called Peel District School Board. We called the ministry. We called the MPs. MPs pointed fingers at Peel. Peel pointed fingers at the ministry. It was a blame game, and we were stuck in the middle. In July, everybody agreed that the reason that Peel District School Board is no longer able to subsidize permit fees was the budget cuts, the ministerial budget cuts, so that they decided to use this cost recovery situation to recoup increase in annual operations costs and labor costs, and that Peel is not profiting anymore, not profiting from these permits. And they said that this is the new reality. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. After learning about the in-year savings that Peel District School Board has, the millions and millions of dollars, I ask, is this reality a true reality? In fact, Peel is one of the richest district school boards in Canada, with millions of dollars in year savings. And yes, we believe you were able to subsidize our permit fees if you wanted to. You're rich with tax money, and we as taxpayers are wondering, were we misled? Were we misled? If it was a financial issue, as claimed, we would have expected a 100% increase versus the normal 2 to 3% increase annually, or 150% increase, but not 400%, not overnight. We were expected to come up with $60,000 in 3 months, June, July, August. Forsaking valuable programs like these and the well-being of thousands and thousands of your Peel students, and hitting your most vulnerable community members, children, youth, and senior groups, cannot be justified. You cannot be comparable to other boards because more than 80% of Peel students are of different ethnic communities or origins, and around 20 to 25% are Muslim students. Peel is the most diverse district school board in Toronto, one of the most diverse cities on planet Earth. You are one of the fastest growing boards in Canada, and we service that growing population. You need us as much as we need you. You are well aware that Peel's growing population weighs heavily on organizations like us. The only reason parents are not knocking on your doors today is that our programs are still operating. With me here are some of my friends, the 6 or 7 schools that I represent today, and some of faculty members, some of our teaching members. On behalf of countless enraged Peel students, I'm officially thanking Trustee Nocha Dakrub for standing by us, listening to us in this testing time. I am requesting the reversal of this rental hike, the reinstating of community subsidies, because you left us penniless. We've completely depleted our finances. We are penniless. We will not be able to open next year. All our emergency funds are gone this year. I am requesting the reversal of this rental hike worth almost $1.3 million because of the abruptness of the decision. And I'm just on a side note. Was this a financial decision or a political decision? Was this made to put pressure on the ministry on our behalf?
Are you close to wrapping up? You
yes.
just reached your 10 minutes.
I am also requesting the reversal of the rental hike because Peel seems to have misled taxpayers, and Peel simply can't afford this. Having said that, we hope this will be temporary, only for this year, as we get an approval from the ministry to increase our grant subsidy so community organizations are not left for future abrupt Peel District School Board decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, for both of you. It's well done. And I am going to now ask questions of clarifications from the trustees. Let's focus on clarifications, please. And the first up is Trustee DeGroot.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question of clarification, but well, first of all, I want to thank you for your delegation and for being brave and standing up and a whole.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who came out as well. Would I be able to move the motion up to now? No? We have to wait until it comes to the agenda? That's fair. So my motion that we added to the agenda is about community permits, but because of the way our procedures work, which is completely fair, it's going to be at the bottom, correct, Chair?
9.7, as I said at the beginning of the approval of the agenda.
So it would be 9.7, so do stick around, but my colleagues will ask questions of clarification now. I'm quite familiar, so I'll let them do that.
Thank you. Any other questions of clarifications from trustees? Seeing none, I want to thank you. I don't know if I wish you a Happy New Year, so Happy New Year.
That's fine, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to move on to our next delegation by Kola Iamati regarding ethical leadership. I don't know if you have a PowerPoint with your presentation. Welcome again, Mr. Iamati, and I said Happy New Year earlier today to you, but I wish the same thing again to you.
Is welcome again supposed to put me off? Well, thank you very much. Happy New Year to all trustees, school administrators, and the community. I used this diagram last time in December, and there was a request to actually use it again. And I know that to some of us might feel that we've talked about issues of anti-Black racism, especially against the background of the ministry review, that we've had enough of it. But we need some change, so we still need to continue to talk about this. And after today, you probably won't see me here talking about anti-Black racism, Chair. But the thing is, once the recommendations are in, myself and other members of the community would definitely like to extend our hands in partnership and cooperation, but also to hold you accountable to those recommendations and expecting you to go beyond that for the communities. So I just want to read a quote. It says, ethical leadership requires leaders to be focused on improving quality and equity in education and promoting the achievement of all students, especially those who have been previously marginalized or disadvantaged. So we just heard right now, I think the last presenter talked about planting trees, and that's actually addressing anti-Black racism. And this is, with due respect, this is the liberalism, the white liberalism that we deal with as people who have dark skin color, talking to us about, planting trees. They used to hang us on trees. They used to lynch us on trees. So now we have to return to planting trees and to talking to people about, how you feel and how you change. There's this notion that people are stuck in issues of individual racism and not the structural racism. So one of the things I'd like to actually enjoin most of you on this board are white. And you don't go out into the community thinking, you don't leave your house, drive your car, go to work thinking, oh, how is my whiteness going to impact me today? That is what we live with each and every day. And to understand that our kids, our children, also have that fear going to school each and every day is something that we need to actually ask you to maybe address in your own time you know, go to your constituents and those who do not look like you and hear a little bit more about how this is. So when we were talking about this morning, I talked about the fact that the economy of this board is based on black bodies. So you have a $2 billion budget, 85% of which goes to teachers. Most of those teachers, if not all, largely of those teachers are white. And then you have the black students disproportionately streamed and the pipeline to, and excluded, formally, informally, you know, labeled, and then also there's a pipeline to the criminal justice system. You have the SRO program. It's, you know, it's very interesting that everything that we have to do within the black community has to be attached to police presence. You know, police are not social workers, but they're in our business from kindergarten to secondary school. And these are the things that we really need you to understand, that some countries don't have $2 billion to spend, but you have it here. And the other thing that I actually see is that we have great administrators here each and every time we present. They are the ones who implement these policies and procedures that are not race neutral. We don't hear from them. They don't say anything. You, the chair, you are vicariously liable for the acts and omissions of these administrators. And it's high time that even before we get the recommendations, the board begins to wonder what can it do differently. Because the Human Rights Commission does say that the employer, as well as the unions, have to make sure that they do not discriminate against these children. So one of the things that we hope that would change as you go along is this back and forth between trustees. Because there's the misogyny, there is the racism, and there's the anti-black racism, even when they're not black. In terms of how do you slap people down when they're talking about children. So when you talk about criminals, for instance, you know, maybe what we need to do is make sure that we put a black principal in that school, make it a science and tech school, and stop streaming. If you really want to do something. You know, you already have an indigenous school as a pilot school. So, you know, those black children also, after they've been, and when you talk about calling them criminals, you're not calling just the school community criminals. You're calling me, you're calling David, you're calling Kathy. And each and every black educator in this hall today, a criminal, just because to be black is to be thought as a criminal. And that's what's ingrained in those of you who do not look like us. And that's why we continuously have to be here and actually speak up against it. Because change has to come. We have been talking about this till we're blue in the face, if that's possible. But now you are going to be mandated to change because of the recommendations. I look to you, I like saying through you, Chair, so through you, Chair, and David, the Vice Chair, sorry, to actually be bold enough to make some changes. Not some mamby-pamby tree planting changes, but we need structural changes to begin to happen. And you have to be bold about it. You, I'm hoping, that will be able to carry along other members of the board, because the damage that has been done with regard to a past chair that was here for 50 years, you know, has to be addressed. Okay, so in terms of your reputation as a board, you just Google Peel School Board and you see what comes up. It's, you know, one says the most racist school board in the country. And that's because you shackled a 6-year-old child, a female, by hands and legs. So 6 years of it. This is the only board that has, this is the board where the youngest person has ever been shackled. And I used to work for a crisis team. When we have mental health issues, we would, if at all we have to use handcuffs, we'll handcuff their hands. This 6-year-old child was shackled by her feet and her hands. That is something, and then you have the communications department also justifying that. So one of the things we want to make sure that you do as you go forward.
Okay, so just your comment about communication support, please you remember.
Okay, so you have a department going on television and justifying shackling a 6-year-old child. It's not acceptable under any circumstances. So what we need you to do is to ensure that you begin to look at yourselves as lead. You have to follow Section 169 of the Education Act. And I need those of you who are trustees to go and check Section 1, subsection 1, and look at what it talks about the climate, it talks about equity, but in terms of your actions, you're not following that. Ethical leadership looks like when one of your own board staff members takes you to the tribunal, not mentioning anybody's name, but you would look at their, the remedies that they asked for, which are in line with your missions and mission visions and values, and you will put them in place. And one of the other things I'd like to ask particular questions. I have about 12 questions here, but I'm not going to ask them all. I'm just going to ask these questions. Because what we need is, we need the board to give us...
So your 10 minutes are up, so 30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay, I'll rush them. We need the board to answer in terms of how much money has been expended in human rights complaints and payouts, and why there are no Black and African Canadian supervisory staff, such as superintendents, on the We Rise program. Can the board provide an analysis regarding Section 274, Regulation 274, as it conflicts with Section 14 of the Ontario Human Rights Code, and which legislation, in your opinion, the board's opinion, takes precedence, and what the board's official position is on that question? And last but not the least, that the board expressly gives us common combatant anti-Black racism language pertaining as well, and to include a performance indicator for trustees, the education director, the administrators, teachers, and to make sure that we can hold you accountable effectively. Thank you very much.
So thank you for the presentation. As I've said in previous ones, those questions, can you give those to Donna Baptiste so we can specifically reply to them?
I will.
So we had the completion. Do I have any questions of clarification of Mr. Yamada? Seeing none, so we'll do our best to answer your questions on the next board meeting. As you know, we had a lot of questions to be asked, so we'll do our best to address them all. So we're now ready to go to our next presentation. Final one is Colin Brown. Colin, I tried to call you earlier so we could connect. Is Colin here? No? No? Okay, well, since Colin's not here, we're going to move on to our next point in the agenda, 8.1, which is the response to the previous board meeting's delegation by Kola Yamadi. I'm going to have someone put that on the floor. Trustee Marchand, are you going to put that on the floor? Put that on the floor, the response. Trustee Sohi, are you going to second that? All in those, any questions on that before we, okay. All those in favor of receipt of that? So passed. Okay, we're now moving on to new business. New New business 9.1 and 9.2 are both Special Education Advisory Committee. What we'll do is bring those together. So do I have Trustee DeCroop, do you put that on the floor? Trustee Andrews, do you second that? Okay, sorry. Trustee, okay, I apologize. You're right. Trustee Marchand, would you like to put that on the floor? And who is Trustee McDonald? K. McDonald, you on the SEAC? Yeah. So would you second that? Okay. Do I have any questions or comments before this? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. So 9192. So the next item is 9.3, the motion that was presented at the last board meeting and now is here for debate. Let me just move this forward. So Trustee Cameron, this is your motion, so you get to speak to it introduce it. Do you have a seconder for the motion? I do. Okay, Trustee Crocker will be seconding the motion. So as I said, we all have 5 minutes. So let me just delete and reset my timer, and we can start. You can introduce your motion, and oh yes, I do have to let you talk. Yes, indeed. There you go.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair McDonald. I won't reread the motion, as it is in today's agenda for all to see. It was also sent to each trustee's email account during the notice of motion submission on December the 10th, 2019. I'm asking my trustee colleagues to give consideration to approving this motion, allowing our board to hear our secondary school students, parents, and school staff, to hear from our secondary school students, parents, and school staff, so we can determine their thoughts about the implementation of the ministry's mandatory e-learning initiative. I suspect that each of us has heard anecdotally how many of our students, parents, and school staff feel about the ministry's e-learning announcement. Between the 12 of us around this table, we would have heard a wide variety of sentiments about this. But that doesn't give us a research-directed, fact-based, data-supported measurement. We have only opinions heard at this stage. The ministry has said in an announcement recently, quote, "Before the launch of the new online learning program, the province will be consulting with Ontarians to ensure our approach to online learning will meet the needs of students and educators," end of quote. They also announced, quote, "The online courses that they take can begin counting toward their graduation requirements beginning in September 2020. It is mid-January 2020, and we have heard nothing from the ministry as to how their two-course e-learning requirement to begin in September 2020 will be rolled out. We have heard nothing about resources and infrastructure and staff training our board will require. Where is the money, the processes, and the assurances of internet access for all of our families? We have families who live in each of our municipalities who are without reliable internet service. From the secondary schools in my area, I have heard about students who stay very late at their schools because there's no internet access at home, either because it isn't available in their area or because families cannot afford this access. Either way, some students are not able to do this e-learning coursework from home. Principals ask, who will supervise our students staying so late at school to get internet access in order to complete their research until 8 p.m. each night? They note the family time lost to students staying at school to solely access internet and the demands on parents to come to the school to pick their children up in later evenings, all created by lack of access at their home. The minister has noted that, quote, "Broadband is also essential to support modernized digital learning in the classroom. That is why we will continue to work with you to ensure that all Ontario students and educators in publicly funded schools will have access to reliable, fast, and secure internet services at school at the speed of 1 megabit per second per student in all regions of the province by 2021-2022, end of quote. You could see how this commitment is about internet access at school, but many of our communities in Peel are not equipped for this reliable service in their homes. And what do our students, parents, and school staff feel about the pedagogical value of this type of learning? If the ministry knows the answers to that, they have not shared this with anyone in our board. Part A of the motion on page 76 asks the director to conduct a random sample of our secondary school students, parents, and staff so we can hear directly from them just what their thoughts on e-learning are. Part B of the motion on page 76 ensures that we're not spending money on a research process, that we would use an in-house survey model. I've confirmed through communications that we have the capability to do this. I appreciate that the cost here is in staff time and energy. Part C asks the chair to write to the Minister, OPSPA, and the Ontario Student Trustees Association to express our concerns about the implementation of mandatory e-learning and to advise them that we are surveying our community with a commitment to reporting back to them when the results become available in the winter 2020. The Toronto District School Board and York Region School Board have both approved a version of this motion. The TDSB has completed the writing of their survey, and they are moving forward with distributing the survey sometime in the next 2 weeks. They have indicated their willingness to share steps taken to this point. Can the 3 largest public school boards in Ontario move forward with a collective voice regarding e-learning concerns? Our partners in our education community would like an opportunity to have their Peel voice heard. Thank you, Chair MacDonald. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this motion.
Great. Thank you very much, Trustee Cameron. So we're going to go to the various people who want to talk to the motion. The first on the list would be Trustee Kay MacDonald.
Thank you. Through your chair. Just before we proceed with the motion, I had a question with regards to if we are able to deal with this right now. I was just wondering because as you are aware that we're under review from the ministry and we're instructed not to be engaging with the community and conducting surveys. I'm wondering if this falls under the preview because in the motion, it's asking that we do that. So I just have concerns against that because it would be going against directive from the ministry. So should we defer it until the ministry review is over? So do I need a motion to defer?
You know, you normally talk through the chair, but I give the opportunity to direct your comment to Trustee Cameron, who brought the motion about if you wanted to defer the motion until after the review. But if that doesn't happen, then you as a trustee, as part of our bylaws, can then put a motion on the floor to defer the motion till after the review.
Okay.
So. Trustee Cameron, I'll just give you a polite, what would you like to do?
So she's asking if you'd be willing. So,
Yep.
Thank you. I would be willing to defer. I think that is appropriate given our earlier discussion as well. I do know that, I hope that trustees came prepared because I gave due notice from December 10th to have a healthy debate and discussion. And so I'd be happy to defer to whenever the board believes, I mean, it could be some time, right? We don't know a definitive date when the reviewers will be finished their work. At least I haven't heard that, but I'm happy.
February 28th, they're supposed to have their report into the minister.
Okay, so would the deferral be specifically to after we have received a report?
Yes, because it's my understanding that we're not to be engaging in any community consultations until the review is finished. And it's also my understanding that February 28th, the report, it will be finished because the ministry will get the report.
Okay, I'm fine with that, that we have a date we're working towards at least, even if they are late with their report, can we say we won't do this until we get a copy of the report?
So I'll need someone to put a motion on the floor to defer that. So since it was brought by Trustee Kay MacDonald, do you want to put a motion on the floor to defer the till, as it will read, till the receipt of the report from the ministry to the appeal board?
Yeah.
Okay, so that will be your motion?
Yes.
Okay, as it read, do we got that?
Deferred until.
Until deferred, okay. So now that that's on the floor as a motion, then you can talk to it if you wish, Trustee MacDonald, but I think you've done, sorry? Oh, sorry, I apologize. We need a seconder before we can start talking. So do you have a seconder, Trustee MacDonald, to your deferral? Trustee DeCroop will be the person who seconded. Okay, going back to my original comments, Trustee MacDonald, do you want to say any more to that motion? No. Do I have any other trustees? I have buttons pressed on here. Do you want to, we're now specifically talking to the deferral, nothing else. So if you're not going to talk to it, unpress your buttons. No? Okay, so based on that, Trustee DeCroop, you're first on the list.
Thank you. I do appreciate that, and thank you very much. First of all, I want to commend you for all the work you've put into this. This is quite amazing. And I know, yeah, it's like 3 pages, guys. No, 2. So I do want to thank you for all of that and recognize that. But I also want to thank Trustee Kay McDonald for bringing the idea of deferring it forward. I want to thank you for agreeing to defer it. I want to add one little concern about the timeline. I know it's a lot. All of it is about mandatory e-learning. But negotiations are taking place as we speak, and there's a slight potential that maybe they do away with the mandatory e-learning as a result of the negotiations. So I wonder if we embarked on all of this work and then we don't really know the results of the negotiations, and things could change. Like they could change tomorrow.
So we're talking to deferral.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not talking about the motion.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if we could defer it until the contracts are settled with OSSTF, with the provincial government. So this way we know that mandatory e-learning is a real thing, and then we can go and investigate all of those things. I wonder. Either way, I'll support the deferral.
I know what you're saying. So can we have a deferral, 2 deferrals running at the same time? I think I have to deal with 1 deferral. I have to deal with the first. Okay, so now you would like to amend the deferral. So, and how would you like it amended? Sorry, we'll get you back on.
So the first, you have to find out from
Yeah,
would
you agree?
Amendment.
No, the deferral, it's Kathy's motion to deferral.
She's asking for amendment to do it.
No, we're only, it's Kathy's. It's
Yeah, so
Kathy's. So what is your, first of all, what is your deferral
my-
amendment that you're looking to add?
My amendment would be to defer the motion until we have a contract, until the negotiations have complete and we have a contract with OSSTF that specifically talks about
Right, but we're amending Kathy's, which is to have the motion deferred until the receipt of the report from the government. So how do you want that amended wording-wise?
Until the receipt of.
So you want to cancel out the receipt of the report and change it to the completion of the OSTF negotiations.
Yeah. If that's okay. Oh, yes.
And then there's sorry, I'm not debating this. I'm just talking about what if it gets solved before the report too, right? Mm-hmm. So we have 2 of those things. So how would you like to amend it?
And? Mm-hmm.
And the ministry?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Kathy, are you accepting that as a friendly amendment? Sorry, Trustee McDonald, I apologize for using your first name. Trustee McDonald, you're okay with that? So, okay, so on the floor, we're still got the amendment as we talked about, now modified to have and the completion of the high school contract negotiations,
Yeah,
right?
and as a courtesy, I would really like to also ask Chair Cameron as the original of the Trustee Cameron, I'm so used to it, if it's okay with him as well, just as a courtesy.
I'll give you that opportunity. I assume he was going to speak to it, but yes.
So I would not be in favor of this endless deferral because we don't have a time date on this one. This will be when negotiations is finished or when the labor issues are wrapped up. We have no idea when that will be. And I would much prefer that we go with the original deadline, which was when we have the reviewer's report. Can we move this motion to the table for discussion at that point? I think that is reasonable to ask the board to consider.
Right, and just to help everyone, when this comes to the report receiving, we can then evaluate at that point in time if we need to defer it again.
Sure.
So can we go then, we're back to Trustee McDonald's original motion and everyone's agreement? Okay, so we're talking to the deferral to receipt of the report from the government. Trustee DeCroop, do you have anything to talk more on this subject?
I support that.
Okay, thank you. Next on up is Trustee Crocker. To the deferral.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, to the deferral. So here we are muddling away, deferring a motion again. I've got to speak against it. I'll begin by commending my trustee colleague, Stan Cameron, for his impeccable research. And had I been speaking to the original motion, I wouldn't have dared repeat any of his arguments. But I would like to point out the timeliness of his motion. Some of us will have seen an article which apparently appeared in the Toronto Star just today, and I won't read the whole thing, at least in part because I ran into a paywall, but it says, secret document shows Ford government changed its mind before making online course mandatory for high schoolers. And it goes on to talk about the fact that they were planning on keeping it optional until 2024, and then plan to slash school board funding while creating courses to sell to other jurisdictions at a profit. And it even muses in the article that the government was thinking about basically getting rid of high school altogether in favor of an e-learning model, which would be appropriate for androids but not for real kids. So the whole point of this motion, I thought, was to make it clear to our constituents and to the government and to anybody else who was listening that we as a board oppose e-learning, and therefore I oppose the deferral and would like to vote on the original motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Crocker. Next up is Trustee Marchand. We're speaking to the deferral.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I echo Mr. Crocker, I think, here. I too have met with the board, and I too received some direction from them. I didn't receive anything banning us from continuing on with regular board business and regular consultation with our communities, our clients, our parents, and the broader spectrum of people we work with in order to continue doing business. If they wanted us to halt all business, they absolutely could have halted all business by coming in, shutting down the board, and appointing somebody. They haven't done so. I don't think it's appropriate that we take what they've told us to be a muzzle in terms of speaking out for our community. This government has had every chance to release their own consultation on this subject, which I think they touted as the most consulted consultation that they've ever consulted on, or some wonderful wordy thing such thereof. So I too speak against deferring this. We've had more than enough time. If after passing this motion, I've got no problem with us with the director consulting with the assistant deputy minister of education who oversees us, and if they tell us that we are going against their words or banning what we do pass this evening, they're in their right to stop us and give us a halt work order on this. That's certainly something they could do and something they're well within their rights to do. But I don't think we should anticipate that we should stop trying to do anything just based upon you shouldn't be doing consultations, when in fact I was not told that. I was told very specifically otherwise, is we need to be engaging with the community. So we shouldn't poll the community here tonight on whether or not we should be continuing funding. I don't think so. I think that's a bad interpretation of what they've said to us, and I will be voting against the deferral and for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Marchand. So we're going to go now to Trustee Lawton.
Thank you. Through you, Chair MacDonald. I understand the amendment and the reason to possibly defer, but I don't agree with it because I don't think it honors the intent of the original motion. Paragraph 7 talks about the obligation to provide the ministry with input about the repercussions of this policy. If we wait until the policy has been established, our input isn't going to be worth much, in my opinion. So I will not support the deferral.
Deferral. Okay. Thank you. Trustee Sohi.
To you, Chair, thank you. I just want to clarify, did we get any written instructions on should we involve the community in any consultations or should we not by the ministry during this timing?
No, they have not given us written. They've only given us verbal. And various people verbal.
And they did give us, like, I did not get that during my interview that we are not supposed to.
No. So, no. They didn't give us any written stuff, no.
Okay.
So do you want to speak to the deferral at all?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That was my clarification.
Okay. Thank you. So I see no one else on the list, so Trustee McDonald, you can close up the deferral debate.
Chair.
Oh, just a sec, there you go. Sorry.
In closing, I simply say that it would be prudent to follow the direction of the Ministry of Education. We have been told, as per the messages that both the chair and vice chair brought to us that as a board, that we should not be holding public consultations. When I asked for clarification, both of you nodded in agreement. So I would assume that is your understanding. Also, as a board, if the board votes to oppose e-learning, to me that's one thing. And I do recognize that the ministry has the power to ban us from doing whatever motion we pass if it goes against their instructions. However, I just think in the spirit of modeling what is correct, if we have an instruction that we should not be engaging in parent consultations, I just think that we should be modeling for students what it is to do when people in authority of us give us an instruction. So with light of that, I think would be prudent to defer the motion to the ministry review is finished. It's probably less than 6 weeks or so. And, you know, I think that whilst I agree with not waiting for negotiations, I think we really should wait until the ministry review is finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee K. McDonald. Now we have had the discussion on the deferral motion, and we're going to have our trustees vote on deferral. So the deferral motion is to defer it to the receipt of the report from by the government. So all in those in excuse me, trustees, please. Okay, all those in favor of deferral. No deferral. I have three in for deferral. All sorry. In deferral. Okay, so back again, please. All those in favor of deferral. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, you're deferring now? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do this vote one more time. Now, since the person with the motion is putting on the deferral or is agreeing to deferral, I'll let all trustees resume the deferral process. So once again, all those trustees looking to defer this motion raise their hand. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. The motion for deferral passes, and we'll wait till the report comes to the book.
Call those who oppose.
Okay, and all those opposed to the deferral, I apologize. Okay, 3. You can't.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
The deferral passed, but okay. This is a new year and new fun, right? Thank you. Thank you, trustees, for being patient with me and working through this process together. And it is in a collaborative way, trying to do the best for our students. And this is an important subject. So we'll obviously address it when the report hits the appeal board, that we can then put it on the next agenda for the board meeting, and we can then debate it again. Okay. So that is 9.3. I have to go back to 9.2. I apologize. That was a report for approval, because there was something in there that needed approval by the board. So Trustee Marchand, since you're on SEAC, I'll have you as the mover. Seconder is Trustee K. McDonald as the seconder. Again, 9.2, all approval and receipt of and approval of that. Yeah, okay, everyone put their hands up. Okay, please, focus. Thank you. Okay, 9.4 is the appointment to a Special Education Advisory Committee, to the appointment. So I'm going to ask Kay McDonald, are you going to put that on the floor since you are on SEAC? Trustee Marchand, I'm going to ask you to second that. So all in approval of the appointment to the SEAC committee? All those in favor? In favor? All those opposed? No, motion carries. Okay, we're going to move to 9.5, the first quarterly financial report as of November 30th. I'm going to ask Trustee Cameron, do you want to put that on the floor? And I'm going to start with Trustee Lawton. Are you going to second that? Do I have any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, so it passed. Okay. So we're on 9.6. So reestablish of an elementary French immersion review committee and notice of appointment of 2 trustees to the French immersion review committee. So this is a notice of motion that at the next board meeting that we're going to have 2 trustees going through an election or nomination process to be on that committee. So do I have Trustee Crocker, do I have you putting this on the floor for me, please? Trustee Benjamin, do you second it? Any comments or questions? All those in favor? The motion passes. Okay, so now we're on item 9.7 of the agenda minutes, or agenda modified, I'm trying to find the motion. Can I borrow that? Okay. So we have, as I said, 9.7 is the amended agenda, added the motion to reinstate subsidies for community permits by Trustee DeCroop. So Trustee DeCroop, you will have 5 minutes to introduce this motion. First of all, before we can talk to it, I need you to have a seconder.
Trustee Sohi will second.
Trustee Sohi, you second this? Okay, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank the board for indulging me and allowing this to be debated today. As this is a matter of finances, this will automatically be a recorded vote, and I'm going to read the motion. Whereas the Peel District School Board has heard from numerous community organizations, community leaders, including Peel elected officials, families, and students who have expressed concern regarding the sudden increase in permit rental rates during this past year. Whereas while there is no question of impact of reduced funding, the Peel District School Board remains a healthy institution financially due to the diligent work of our finance department. Whereas community organizations have expressed that our community programs will begin to close down or be decreased as a result of being unable to afford the Peel District School Board's new rates. Whereas the Peel District School Board has been providing subsidies to community permits for well over 16 years, as far as I've been told, as far as I've heard. Whereas the loss of community programs will have a significant negative impact on our community as a whole, and the increase in permit rates has added a significant financial burden to our community groups. Be it resolved that the Peel District School Board use funds available in reserves to reinstate subsidies previously provided to community permits in the amount of $1.3 million, as previously stated on October 10, 2019, in response to written questions submitted by myself, Trustee Dacru, immediately. And can I introduce it? That's just reading it. I was just reading it. I'm going to introduce it now.
Sorry, you have 3 minutes. You have 3.
No, I was just reading it.
3 more minutes.
Okay, normally we're supposed to just give you a total.
Oh, okay.
Because we've all have it in front of us, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
You passed it out.
Well, yeah, I know, but I didn't know everybody would have read it.
Okay, I'll be leeway, but can we
Yes, I'll be quick. Community programs are important to the fabric of our society. Seniors clubs, sports clubs, scouts, cadets, religious organizations, language programs, cultural programs, youth programs have all been impacted by the sudden increase in rates we have put forth this year. This motion is not about funding community permits. This motion is about reversing cuts that this board has made that have had an immeasurable impact on our community in Peel. We have heard concerns from community groups and members, students, elected officials, and parents. The families being serviced by these permits are in most cases our own students, participating in extracurricular activities of their choice or of cultural significance. We would still be charging community permits and permit holders. This would just bring the rates back to where they were a year ago. This is not a new thing, prior to the change in formula. I also want to bring to the board's attention that I have a petition with me today that has so far collected over 1,700 signatures in just a few weeks, if I may add, that I plan to bring to the attention of the minister and the MPPs so that we can work on ways to prevent this from happening again, as this was the request from the community. This policy and decision is an example of changes that we sometimes make and unintentionally end up further marginalizing marginalized diverse communities. And in Peel, we really cannot afford that. So today, I am seeking the support of my colleagues on behalf of every community organization in Peel. We have heard previous delegations about this. We have had discussions about this. We know the financial impact. We have the information in front of us, and I believe that I'm very clear on what I'm asking for, and I really hope that we can count on your support so that we can continue building a healthy, happy community in Peel that we would be proud to serve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee DeCroop, and appreciate you actually did all that under 5 minutes, so well done. So I'm just, I'm sorry, I was doing some checking on things of your motion because your motion came to us, we really didn't have time to review it. So I'm just checking on one thing to see if it's appropriate.
I have it.
No. It's just a wording. I just want to make sure we're allowed to have the wording in there. Because this is a financial motion, by the way, it will be a recorded vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to also make that clear. I was clarifying that.
I said that.
Yeah, I know. So I just wanted to make sure I was getting that information too. So I'm just waiting for one more item. 1 second. So we may be having to strike just 2 words out of your motion.
Okay.
Doesn't change the motion, it just changes reference. Do I need to take it out? Okay. So in your be it resolved, the funds available, the words in reserve.
Okay.
I'd like to take in reserve.
Sure.
Okay?
No problem.
A friendly amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so trustees, the word in reserved.
You'll explain that to me later, just so
We'll
I learn.
explain that later.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that now makes it okay to be on the floor to talk about. And so now we're going to go open the floor to trustees to speak to the motion that we have in front of us. We have first on the list here Trustee Marchand. So here we go.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion tonight. Although we are not a rich and wealthy board, and our cuts from the ministry were very real. We did make some hard decisions, and this unfortunately was one of them. Not perhaps one that was unanimously supported, but one that was made nonetheless. We've heard loud and clear from the community, and I think it's incumbent upon us to listen to the community and change decisions and find the funds within the board to ensure that these programs continue this year at least. And during that year, hopefully we'll be able to find the time to work with the provincial and municipal partners who have downloaded some of this onto the school board, that we can make sure that these spaces are available to the community at a reasonable time frame and at a reasonable cost. As one of the biggest landlords in Peel and one of the biggest stewards of public space, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that that space is in good repair and in good condition so that when you groups want to use it, that it's there for your use as well. And that unfortunately does come with costs. Our primary mandate is to ensure the education and quality education of all of our students. But I think that includes cultural heritage cultural language classes, social engagement, community engagement, fundraising, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cubs, all of those kind of programs, I think, really enhance the education of our students. Learning doesn't end when the bell ends at the end of the day, nor does it suddenly magically start again the next morning. I think that all that learning and lifelong learning is something we need to encourage in all of our students. We know many of our students don't learn well in the classroom and are only goaded into going into class by the extracurricular programs and engagements that your kind of groups offer to them through school property. School property should be seen as a good place to go all the time, 24 hours a day. I think we need to do a lot more to expand this. Gym space, classroom space are really expensive. Meeting space is really expensive. We're already paying for the bricks and mortars, and that's not us, that's you paying for the bricks and mortars. So really they are your schools and your community spaces, and you should have the right to access them at a reasonable rate. And I hope you echo this back to the municipal partners and the provincial partners when we go to look for increased funding next year to make sure that we can sustain this kind of programming for you for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Marchand. So we're going to go to Trustee Sohi.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you so much for bringing this again on the table and taking the lead on that with the petition and having that many signatures and bringing everyone together again. From day one, my heart was, in the pieces when we heard that we won't be able to do it anymore. But I'm glad that we found some money in our reserves or from our, the surplus, whatever we have, and we were able to bring this money to support all the organizations like yourself who are not just giving back to the community, but all the sports organizations. As a sports person myself, we want to engage our youth in the after-school activities, in sports, in physical activities as well. And all those not-for-profit and charitable organizations who run on a minimal budget, and it was really hard for the families to pay 300 times more than what they were paying before. So it was a sudden, abrupt change, and you never get that kind of a pay scale hike in your payroll. It was very difficult, and we heard again and again from many different community organizations, and thousands of our students were impacted. And I'm really happy to support this and second this motion for our students so that they can get involved into those activities and be off the streets and work together. Teamwork. When we are talking about anti-Black racism or any other type of discrimination and racism, these are the kind of events when the students are together and they're working together on something and giving back to the community and looking into the value of those things and be grateful for what they have. So again, I'm in full support of this, and hopefully this message will be clear to our community partners, different other stakeholders, to our ministry so that they can subsidize or give us more money to continue this for the following years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Sohi. So we're now on Trustee Kay McDonald. You're going to speak to the motion.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I too would like to support this motion here before us because I'm a firm believer in schools as a community hub. I'm also a firm believer in the importance of students understanding their heritage, their culture, and their ethnicity. I have concrete examples as a trustee as I visit my schools since 2014. I've seen Indigenous students blossom and grow as they learn to be proud of being Indigenous. I see it in Black youth that are engaged and made to feel proud of their culture and the skin they are in. I'm fully aware as a mother of 4 Black children how important it is to instill a sense of pride and not criminalizing Black children. Such programs that Maggie described are so important for for our youth. I cannot imagine a September when she'll have to turn away all those young people who will be eager and willing to participate in the Saturday program where they learn so much about who they are. They also learned we saw from the little slideshow that was presented, how to be great civic and great contributors to our society. I can't imagine having these students wake up, and as she presented, most of them are our own Peel students, without this activity that they look forward to every day. I think our board benefits from having such programs in our schools. We have heard from the cadets, we have heard from cricket associations. There were so many groups that came before us that talk about the financial hardship that they are experiencing. And I guess I always fall back to my belief in that it truly takes a village. So I will wholeheartedly be supporting this motion as we strive to raise the village of Peel District School Board students. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee K. McDonald. Now it'll be Trustee Crocker. Sorry, your time is up.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I'm really torn on this. I understand and I sympathize with the arguments. I'm concerned, however, about the precedent here. And there's no escaping the fact that this is 1.3 million that's coming out of funds that were really designated for the classroom. And we are, as trustees, after all, stewards of the school system, as opposed to the wider community and the groups, whatever good work they're doing. So I need an answer to a question for clarification. I guess it's really two questions. The question to the mover. Is this a one-off on the understanding that it'll come to the board again at budget time and we'll debate it then?
Okay, Trustee de Kroop.
No, this is a reversal of cuts and reinstating subsidies that we've been giving for 16 years. This is not a one-off. This is not just for this year. This is to reinstate what had been going on for the past whoever knows how many years. And we can always revisit things at budget time. We revisit everything at budget time. But, I mean, the wording is for this year because I'd like it done immediately and because the impact has been quite significant. I've heard from people who have mortgaged their homes to pay for our rental increases. This is very significant. So,
so if I understand, and yes,
sure.
let's you know, I was confused by your response to that question. Yes.
Point of clarification, if I may, Chair.
I think everyone gets an opportunity to speak, and so.
It's a point of clarification.
Okay, I'll let you. Yeah.
Yeah, I will seek, I guess, from the director. I don't think we're able to bind future budgets through passing a motion today. So this motion cannot go past next year's budget if I understand your question.
And thank you. And Trustee Marchand, that was what I was trying to get to, because I heard two answers to both that question. So I wanted to get to resolve that really it's only to reinstate the money for this budget cycle, and we go through another one next year and determine what we're going to do on this issue like we do every year.
Yeah, but I just...
So does that answer, is that what I heard?
I have an answer to the first part of my question. May I have an answer to the second part of my question, Chair?
Okay, so yes, absolutely.
So on that understanding, and since one of the complaints that we heard from a number of the community groups was that they were caught flat-footed by this, that they didn't have enough time to prepare, and it came at a bad time in the year because of summer months and so on. And again, I understand and I sympathize with that. But with the understanding that we have to strike another budget this year in June, and we don't know at this point what further cuts, or for that matter, what further gifts may come our way, that community groups should consider themselves on notice that this might not be sustainable, even if it passes tonight. This may indeed be a one-off, and they better look at funding going forward.
So I'm not sure if that's a question or if the statement, if this moves forward, approves.
So my question, it is indeed a question to the mover. Would that be her understanding that that these groups would be on notice, that they would now understand with many months to go before budget time that we might not be able to sustain this funding if indeed this motion passes? Thank you, Chair.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I wholeheartedly intend to fight for community permits every year if I have to. I believe that these programs are very important. Now, if we need to revisit...
Can we just focus on response to his question, please?
I am.
Yes or no?
I am.
You have a chance to close the argument.
It's not just a yes or no question.
He asked, is this intent to continue
He's
to
asking
put them on notice?
if I
No,
understand and if I want to put them on notice.
No.
No, I don't want to put them on notice. If
Just
we,
say so.
at budget time, if we get to a point where we need to make tough decisions like we did this time, then we need to communicate that better than we did this time. We are not a board that's afraid of making tough decisions
You just
when necessary.
You answered his question. Thank you. So, Trustee Crocker, did you want any more comments to finish? You had your two questions.
Since you offered, Chair, supplemental, given all that, the problem is that we're then into a situation where it's June again, and our budget says that we don't have the money. Then once again, the timing doesn't work. And so I really think it's fair to let the community know that this may not be sustainable going forward if indeed the motion passes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Crocker. Appreciate it. So next on my list is Trustee Benjamin.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'd just like to reiterate the fact that these cuts were sudden, and we were also, caught by surprise. The trustees did discuss very long, and all of us put in a lot of effort to try and see how we could accommodate all the community groups that were approaching us. And we were very sorry to say no at that point of time. It was a difficult decision to take, so it was not easy for us. And I would support this motion. And as Trustee Crocker said, it will be up to June because we have to take a decision again. For now, I'd like to say that I'm voting for this motion positively. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to remind trustees that we decide on the budget in June, but that doesn't start until September 1st. So it really goes till the end of August is what we're talking about. Okay, next up I have Trustee Lawton.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. McDonald, through you. I think this is a very good example of, I think has already been mentioned, the need to fully understand the implications of every decision we make. As Trustee Benjamin said, as Trustee Crocker has said, we have spent a lot of time going over this particular issue. I would say that none of us would have chosen to make the decision that we did. But we did choose to make that decision because for me, the decision was made because our core business must be focused on and being able to support our students in their educational day is the focus of this board. I have a couple of concerns, and certainly I'm hoping that in the response to the person who delegated, I'd like to make sure that we correct some of the comments that were unintentionally made. I have no doubt that that the calculation is correct, but we certainly did not see custodians receiving $68 an hour, to my understanding, and it's sometimes very difficult to get information on our system. But I think it's very important that we make those comments clear. I also am torn on whether or not to support this motion, not because I don't think that we should be supporting our community groups. I absolutely do think so. But again, I go back to the fact that we listened to the staff recommendations and we made a decision at that time. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Trustee Lawton. So next on the list would be Trustee Cameron.
Thank you. I was busy serving water.
I'll have some too.
All over my lap. So I think what goes through my mind when I hear this motion is how many people came before us before today, and how many people each of us, or how many groups each of us met with outside of this boardroom because of the very same concerns about the increase in fees. I was thinking about Scouts, Cubs, Basketball Association, seniors, just all came to mind because they were pretty angry and pretty frustrated and also equally at a loss. Excuse me, perhaps the difference is today we have a motion before us attempting to address the challenge that our groups have had and have experienced. And so through you, Chair, I have a question to administration.
Okay.
How would they see this unfolding? Would they, if we approve this today, would they be going back to their bank account and giving all of those groups some money back, calculated by the increase, or just how? I don't really understand the process as to how this would unfold fairly for all of the groups who have come before us.
So I think we'll have to ask that through, Associate Director Gill. Okay, so I'm going to find you on the list here. Where are you? Oh, there he is. There you go.
Yes, through you. Actually, it depends upon the motion. If the motion is that we go back and implement the old rates as of September 1st, then yes, of course, we will have to go back and give back those additional charges that back to those groups. Otherwise, if it's passed and if it is as of today, then it will be moving forward from here on.
I can clarify what I'd like.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Green, you're next up. And thank you, Associate Director Gill.
So thank you very much, and thank you for each and every one that came tonight to delegate. I have no problem supporting this, but the very fact is I want us to be mindful and think of the things that we do at this table. I've heard a lot of group came to us, talked to us about the same issue. We had so much delegation on the same issue, right? And mark you, I understand, I feel the pain, I feel the pinch, because I'm an executive director for a non-for-profit group who use a lot of Peelschools for our programs, but we did nothing. We did nothing. So we need, as a board, I want us to be conscious about when we make decisions and who do we give preference over the other. And how do we go back and really reach out to all the delegation that came to us to access? Because I think, as I said, I have no problem supporting this, but I'm going to expect that either letter of apology or something to all those groups that came before and was turned away. We need to respect every group, everyone, and we need to be fair to all concerned. When we are talking about equity and inclusion, we need to be fair to every single group. And I have concern, unless we, as I said, I have no problem supporting our kids, any programs that's going to help our kids, but those groups that came before us and delegated, and we turned them away. We need to reach, if this motion passed, I would like to see us reach out to them somewhere or the other with a letter, either apologize or explain to them what has happened here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Green. So I have now Trustee Andrews.
Thank you, through you, Chair. You know, I'm not going to repeat everything that my fellow colleagues have said, but we have heard from the community loud and clear, and that's very evident by all of the people that, you know, that have come here tonight. It's going on 10:10, and you're all still here. So I will be supporting this motion. However, you know, I think some things that, you know, we need to consider is that, you know, we also have lack of funds in other areas, poverty, mental health, spec ed. You know, and the decisions that we make are tough decisions, especially at budget time. So again, as I said, I will support this motion, but we will have to see, you know, what happens at budget time this year when we do the planning. And if anything, it will get kids out of their devices and, you know, doing community things, which I think, you know, I think is great. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're at no other trustees. All the trustees have spoken. So I think now we're left with Trustee de Groot. Now you get to close the arguments on your motion.
Thank you. I really appreciate that that the board has taken the time to listen, and I do appreciate all the supportive comments from my colleagues. I do want to address a couple of the concerns that came up. I've heard a lot about, well, you know, it's only binding until budget. Yes, everything we do is only binding until budget. Next year, we could literally change everything based on government funding. The government can change everything for us. So everything is only binding for 1 year that we do around here. But despite all of everything that we've experienced in this past year, specifically around funding changes and funding cuts and all of the different elements that have been going on, this board remains in fine financial shape. And if I'm missing something, if any of our administration would like to, you know, provide me with further information that says that we are in dire financial need to be cutting programs here and there, then please let me know. But as long as I understand that our financial situation is fine, it wasn't as great as it was a year ago, but it's still fine, and that we can afford this, I'm going to continue to support it, because the impact that we have, the positive impact these community groups have on our community is so, and our students and our families is so great that it is an investment, and it is an investment for an education board. I also hear a lot of this, and not just specifically to community permit motions, but this comes up a lot. I hear a lot from my colleagues about, well, we want to put money in the classrooms, and we want to put money in mental health, and we want to put money in poverty. Bring a motion, I'll support it. I want to put money in all of those things. So let's do it. I invite my colleagues to bring a motion, give me a call, I'll second it, we'll work on it together. Let's put money in the classrooms. But let's not use that as always an
as an, a way not to fund other things. It doesn't always have to be this or that. We need to be, mindful of what our financial situation is, what we can and cannot afford, but all of the advice that I've heard and I've learned, and I've done a lot of work on this. It takes a lot of time to be able to get information, and you had information before you. And this is partly also to answer another concern that came up. Why didn't we do this earlier? We had a number of community groups. Absolutely, I agree with you. We need to issue a letter of apology to all of those community groups, especially the ones that actually had to pull out and are not running their programs anymore, if there are any. But I needed to get the information. I needed to find out how much money it costs. That took some time because we actually asked our staff to spend an enormous amount of time digging into all of that information to get that. And once we had that, I had to, work with community groups to find out what the impact was. I needed to get a petition. I specifically told the community groups, I need to be able to demonstrate to my colleagues that this isn't just a small impact that's only impacting a few people. We need to be able to demonstrate that this is impacting a large number of people. And I have 1,700 signatures right here with me right now. However, I've actually been contacted by multiple community organizations on Twitter, over email, requesting the petition to sign it more. So the impact is there. It's been demonstrated. I feel that and all of that takes time. So, I feel that I've done my due diligence in terms of being able to present a case to my colleagues in order for them to be able to make an informed decision. And that took me some time. Should we issue an apology? Absolutely. We should issue an apology to everybody who came and delegated before us and called us and asked for some assistance, but also let them know that we did the work, we listened, we figured out how to solve the solution. We did it as a team. And we're moving forward, and we want to work with the community to ensure that we're able to, we're not just a school board that's just going to sit on the side and just have math in a classroom. We're a community. We're a big part of that, and we have to be a part of that. And that's all. I hope it sounds like we're going to be okay. I hope everybody supports it, and thank you.
So we have the motion on the floor. Since it's a money motion, we have to have a recorded vote, meaning that we have to stand. So all in favor of this motion, please stand.
Okay, please, audience, we have to hear the recorded vote.
Trustee Lawton, you were standing up before. You're in favor? So all in favor is Trustees Lawton, Benjamin, Sohi, Andrews, McDonald, yep. Green, Cameron, DeCruz, Marchant, McDonald, Crocker. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
so that makes it
11 binding and 2.
And 1 non-binding. So that's a unanimous that the motion is passed.
Yes.
So this motion will start today, moving forward, and does the fiscal period ending of August this year. Budget process will start in June for the next budget cycle, which fiscally starts September 1st. Okay, so we're now moving on to item 10 with our 10.1 anti-racism policy update by Associate Director Gruwal.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put it up.
I'll try not to. Can I go ahead, Chair? Okay, thank you. So again, through you, Chair, the purpose of this report today is to provide you an update around the status of the anti-racism policy. As you may recall, there was questions from the public in the fall around the status of this policy. So the purpose of today's report is to provide that update. So as a background, at the May 14th regular meeting of the board, Trustee Kay McDonald submitted the following notice of motion. Be it resolved that the Peel District School Board develop and implement an anti-racism policy. This motion was approved by the Board of Trustees on May 28th, 2019. In preparation to respond to this board-approved motion, we, as the equity staff, engaged in an environmental scan. We looked at boards of education, government institutions, universities, municipalities, and non-for-profit organizations on what they were doing around an anti-racism policy. And really, the purpose of conducting such an environmental scan was to look at best practices and models for consideration moving forward. So taking these two approaches, both in terms of policy review and conversation with other jurisdictions, it became very evident to us to inform our own anti-racism policy development, we needed to consider a few of these factors. And the factors are listed there for you, and I just want to highlight a couple of them. First of all, there needed to be a substantive consultation with staff and stakeholder groups. We also needed to develop not only an anti-racism policy, but an operational plan that would support it. And finally, there needed to be obviously some anti-racism training capacity building for all levels of the organization when you are developing such a policy and plan. So it is with this in mind that the equity staff has suggested that we take a similar approach in our development of our own anti-racism policy and operational plan in order to dismantle systemic racism on the board and continue our commitment for equity for all. So we anticipated that the policy would be completed for Trustee Review Committee in January 2020, and that's what I spoke about earlier, that in the fall we felt if we had gone through a very quick process, we could have had a policy in front of you, but it would not have included all the stakeholder consultations that we have learned are most important as we move forward. However, given the extensive consultation process required in the current Ministry of Education review of the board, we believe that it would be in the best interest to not start these community consultations until the Ministry of Education report is completed. But in the meantime, staff will continue to gather information that would be relevant to the development of the anti-racism policy. There's lots of legwork that we can do, and then ready to go once the Ministry of Review recommendations are tabled. That is the report. We felt as administration that it was important to bring this back to you. We want to be transparent with community that we haven't forgot about the anti-racism policy. We just know with all of the other various nuances in the board right now and the context pieces that it is important to wait and to do an appropriate consultation process and full development of policy as well as an operating procedure that would support it. So happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Trustee. Thank you, Associate Director Pauline Grula. Thank you very much for this presentation on an important topic that we are working on in the board, and I'd like to have Trustee Green ask you some questions.
Well, thank you. Not just to ask question, because this is important that we brought this here and the clarification, because as I said before, that is very important that whenever time, whether a motion or a question is asked, that, you know, sometimes we have to put things on hold, but the public in itself need to know what's happening. And doing this is clear indication of the direction that we want to go, in always being accountable to the community, the public. So I really want to thank you for bringing this forward, and look forward that after the review that we will get down to work and really develop full SOP that we can bring back, that we can work with, and that we can also use to hold people accountable. So thank you very much, and I look forward to that work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee K. McDonald?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So thank you, Associate Director Graywell, for that report. I'm very excited to see it as it unfolds. I am disappointed that it's on hold, but I understand the rationale behind that. But I have a question for you. To the best of your knowledge, has the Peel District School Board ever had an anti-racism policy?
So again, through you, Chair, we currently have a couple of policies that would be in the equity and inclusion realm. One would be our equity and inclusion of education policy. I can't remember the policy number right now. Maybe somebody can help me. Sorry? 54, thank you. We also know a few years back when the ministry first had introduced the equity and inclusion strategy, there was a requirement around an they called it the ethno-cultural policy, so that did exist, but that preceded that particular one. But a particular anti-racist policy, far as I'm aware, I have not seen that in the board. Anti-racism might have been articulated in some of those policies, but not as a standalone policy that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go on to Trustee DeCroop.
Thank you, Associate Director, for all your work on this. For how long did we say it's going to be on hold for?
So again, through you, Chair, as per conversations that have taken place earlier today, we know the minister should be getting a report in February. So depending on when the board gets the report, at that point, depending on what some of those recommendations are, they may actually dovetail into some of that work. So we'll need to take those into consideration. Mm-hmm. So I would like to say spring, but also dependent upon when the board actually receives the recommendations.
Okay. And then this would likely be also a part of the implementation and potentially even kind of make its way throughout the system, hopefully. Thank you so much for all of this, and thank you to Trustee Kathy McDonald for bringing this forward. I look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee DeCroop. And if my memory goes back 17 years ago, we actually had an anti-racism policy, didn't we? No? Okay, so, okay.
Again, through you, Chair, I can go back and go back through some archives and check, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Trustee, sorry, Vice Chair said he did it. Because I thought we went through a renaming process and we did the equity inclusion change. But anyway, that's good. I appreciate this and look forward to when we can bring it forward and do the work, and that's excellent. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're now on to item 11. Do we have anything from the director? That's a no. So on item 12, we have 12.1 and 12.2, which was added in the agenda for OPSPA fast track. So I think who's on OPSPA? We have Trustee Andrews and Trustee Green. So Trustee Andrews, you put on the floor. Trustee Green, you second that. All those in approval of both items, would you raise your hands? Approved. Okay. Anyone communication for action received? I don't see anything there. We'll move on. Response of administration to former questions. We don't have any, so we'll move past that. Reports from trustee representatives on councils or associations. Do I have any there? I don't see any. We'll move forward. So comments or questions from board members. So we'll start down the Trustee Aurora. Do we have any? Trustee Crocker? Trustee McDonald? Trustee, as I said, Trustee McDonald, sorry, I just got it up there. No, okay. Oh, you do have something? I apologize.
So first, I'd like to express my condolences to the members, if there are any members of the Peel District School Board family that may have lost loved ones in the ill-fated Ukrainian passenger jet that was shot down on January the 8th, killing all 176 people on board. I'd also like to send out condolences to the McCrimmon Middle School family at the passing of John Morris. Also, I'd like to publicly thank the We Rise Together SEAC committee, especially the parent reps, Daniel Dowdy, Mulu Jalatu Hay, Christine Diaz, and my co-chair, Adoma Patterson, for the parent engagement session on Saturday, January 11th. It was a very successful session despite the horrendous weather conditions. So I just wanted to publicly thank them for the great work that they're doing. Thank you. And Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. Trustee Marchand? Trustee DeCroop?
Just want to say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Trustee Cameron? Trustee Green? Start way down there. Trustee Lawton? Trustee Benjamin? Trustee Sohi?
Thank you. As this is the first meeting of this new year, I just would like to start the year of 2020 wishing everyone this is a time to reflect on what the past year has been and what lessons we can learn from it to make our school safe and welcoming for all. I also want to remind our whole Peel family, Peel school community about the flu season. During this holiday time, I lost really a young neighbor, a mother of a 1-year-old to pneumonia. So it's just like a flu season. We just sometimes don't pay attention at the early stages and we just think it's just a flu and cough. Please take care of yourself and take care of your loved ones and seek a medical attention as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Trustee Andrews? Okay, so now we move on to public question period. So, public question period was introduced by trustees to allow members of the community to ask questions of the school board. All questions will be addressed to the attention of me, the chair, and will be issue-based. Like the delegation, it will be respectful and not name anyone, any position, or organization in a disrespectful way. If you would like to make a comment, we will refer to you to our delegation process, since this time is set out in the agenda. Sorry, what? Yeah, please, so please come forward, introduce yourself, indicate who you are and where you are from in our Peel region. For me, I like one question at a time, and I will do the best to answer that question directly or direct that question to the appropriate person. Otherwise, we will respond to you at a future date. Per bylaw G10, question period will be 15 minutes. Unless under my discretion, I'll be extending it. But since we have another meeting later after this meeting, I will be holding it to 15 minutes. So, do I have any questions? Okay, just be a sec. I got to turn the podium on. I turned it off. There you go.
Thank you. My name is Kolaili Yamade. The first question is, did the board give a response to my last delegation? Because it was on the agenda, but I don't think that...
Yes, so in the package, 8.1 was the response to your delegation.
What was it responded to?
Sorry? Your delegation from December.
In the package?
It's in the package, and you will also get a letter.
Okay, so when's that letter due?
I signed the letters today, so the letter comes out, but I don't know if we have any board packages up there. Maybe there. If you want, our communication director has it up there, or you can come to me. I can give it to you after the meeting if you want.
All right, then. Thank you.
Okay.
And through which I'd like to ask some questions regarding the anti-racism policy that's on hold. Is that okay? So, was that policy been drawn up before the brouhaha around the ministry review?
Correct. That started before. It was a work in process.
Does a policy have a process attached to it?
Well, we don't know. We just started the work and we were told to put it on hold. So
yeah, what I mean is, to the degree that it was presented today, even though it's on hold, does it have a because the usual thing is, or what you see with Peel is you see the policies, but there are no processes or procedures to them.
So policies are different from operating procedures, just to give the process. So policy will state that we have this, you know, you can look at all our policies online, talks about, you know, busing and what have you, and it will talk about the general governance around it, and then from that, an operational policies. And for a policy to come through, it will be crafted, then brought to our trustee review committee where trustees review it with administration. Then it comes to the board to be voted, where we have to, I believe, have a 2/3 majority to have a policy introduced into the board. So does that answer your question?
So no, I hear what you're saying in terms of operations. So for instance, 51 is the policy 51, but it's left to the devices of whoever wants to exert power over that policy. So in terms of stakeholders who want to use that policy, they're left to their own devices. Yes, and policy 48 is like that, and so a lot of, I've tried to use a lot of policies and tried to use them to kind of ask questions of the board, and the board comes up with sometimes wishy-washy responses because there is no process attached to it. So it's really, so what I'm trying to say is, even though it's in its embryonic stage, we need to start saying, okay, we have a policy, but a policy doesn't mean anything if you can't have a roadmap or an algorithm.
Okay, and it's hard to talk about something we don't know what it looks like. So, but first of all, I want to talk about the governance model, how the trustees create policies, and then the administration then create operation procedures and do the operational piece of that. So, as a policy, we don't get into the operational side, and that's how our policies are defined. But when we bring this policy forward, I think we heard in the spring or later, then we can have a look at it, and then we can have that conversation with you again and see if it meets the criteria that you're talking about.
Okay. So the last time we were here, there was a question around how much has been spent by the board with regard to human rights payments. And according to the Education Act, every member of the public has a right to ask that question. So the question wasn't answered the last time, or I think you said it'll be answered at the next meeting.
And it is a work in progress. We're in the process to endeavoring the response to that question. It's not, it hasn't been forgotten. And we have 3 questions asked by Trustee DeCroop that I am working to resolve through our lawyer to get a response on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public questions? Okay. So we have about 8 more minutes before we have to call it an adjournment. Yes, please introduce yourself and where you're from in our great Peel.
Yes, this is Ali Hamza.
Speak closer to the mic so we can hear you. Thank you.
Ali Hamza. I'm a resident of Mississauga with my wife and 7 children for the last 22 years.
Okay.
We're proud Mississauga residents. I'm an R&D person. I'm an engineer by trade. Innovations and patents and research. I enjoyed this session today. I wanted to thank everybody for it. I wanted to make a comment. I'm not sure.
I'd like a question, please. This is question period.
Question. I don't really know how to phrase it into a question. It's relevant to today and relevant to the next budget about the community, and it's really, I want to get permission from you to proceed with my comment. I'm not sure how to phrase it into a question. It's a concern. It's really a serious concern that I want to mention to you.
Well, then why don't you come to me and we can talk about it after the meeting and have that concern, or otherwise you can delegate, as I said in my introduction to the question period, you can ask for a delegation, talk to our...
Maybe I'll phrase it into a question then. I will phrase it into a question. Why would it be justifiable and intelligent and civilized to hit community schools over weekends with a sudden 400% when there isn't a significant economic difficulty that is being publicly broadcast? What makes it not reasonable to be scheduling incremental increases? And since the community schools help with multiculturalism and help against sex enslavement of kids, and help take them out away from the streets, and help the government with the identity of the multicultural, why wouldn't the board also look for ways to reach out to the federal government and to provincial government to have them help in, as opposed to apply something that is equivalent at least to bullying the communities out of the schools, and it could be a hostility towards the schools? Why wasn't an incremental increase and an engagement not the path, as opposed to hitting them with an equivalent eviction from the schools?
Okay, so I can't answer you why we didn't do this incremental and why didn't we talk to the community, because that wasn't part of our conversation at the time. But what I can tell you is why we decided to do what we did as a board. As you probably are aware, there was $29 million cut out of the budget by the government. 29. So that meant we had to make some very difficult choices as trustees. And one of those choices, you know, came across the rental. We were subsidizing, as we found out today, 1.3 million, meaning that we were taking 1.3 million earmarked for kids in the classroom, all kinds of things for kids, and giving it to other community members to use our facilities, from adults to kids in that process. And at the time, the trustees felt that they, you know, and in that process, we had to make some other deep cuts in our central board office. We lost a lot of resource teachers and other items from our teaching implementation model. So we just, as trustees at that time, we just couldn't justify taking 1.3 million that the government was giving us for education and putting it into community use. We all understand and value the community that we live in and support them, but we just couldn't financially see how we could do that when kids and education are our primary goal. So tonight, we made a change in that, and we provided a temporary solution. In addition, we reached out to the governments. We've reached out to our MPP members because they cut the money. If they wouldn't have cut this budget money, then we wouldn't be in the mess, and we wouldn't have had to do what we did to recover 29 million somehow. Because we can't, as you heard, you know, most of our system is salaries, so that usually means we have to cut people, not, you know, we can't cut funding to schools and supplies, et cetera. That's to the bone as it is. So I hope that answers your question. It doesn't answer it directly why, but I think we've learned a good lesson that if we were going to do this in the future, we will communicate it better and get everyone involved in that process so we can maybe work with you as well as other community members to raise this to the government to say, look, if we don't get funding, this is what we're going to have to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I have any other questions or comments? If not, I will then move on to adoption of the in-committee report. Do I have Trustee Crocker to put it on the floor? Trustee Lawton, do I get you to second it? All those in favor? So be it. So I'm going for adjournment, but I just want to remind trustees we're going into private session right after this. So do I have Trustee Benjamin? You're going to put that on the floor for adjournment. Trustee Cameron seconded. All those in favor of adjournment? So adjourned. So meet 5 minutes from now?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.